You stand at the lip of a year already leaning toward you, a horizon composing itself in slow light. You feel it in the hush beneath your ordinary breath, as if some older intelligence has returned to the room and is waiting for your attention to turn. You are not asked to believe, you are asked to notice. The question before you is simple and tender. What pattern will your hands place into the days that shape the air your children will breathe? This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. You sense the world like a living instrument, tuned by the pressure of your choices. You feel how a small kindness tilts the street toward gentleness, how a quiet refusal to feed on outrage steadies the tone of a household, how a vow whispered in the dark rearranges the furniture of possibility. The quantum field does not argue, it listens. It takes the measurement of your attention and composes reality around it, the way water answers the moon. You have watched the old observer loop tighten around the jaw of the age, cycling the same conclusions, the same postures of fear, the same rehearsed despair. You have also felt the seam loosen. It happens in stillness, when the clamor falls below the threshold and the heart remembers its original cadence. In that interval, coherence rises like warmth behind your sternum and your gaze finds an honest angle on the day. The field of remembrance stirs, and what looked fixed begins to glow with soft edges and a negotiable center. You do not move the future by force. You move it by fidelity to the frequency that already knows where you are going. Call it your destiny vector if you need a name, not a rigid line, but a luminous drift that gathers you when you stop performing for outcomes and start listening for truth. The children who will inherit your result are listening to, not to your arguments, but to your signal. They learn from what your presence confirms is possible. You feel the year 2026 like a shoreline taking shape in fog. The closer you breathe, the clearer the outline becomes. The choice is not between noise and silence. The choice is whether your inner weather will be rented out to the loudest bidder or stewarded like a sanctuary. Every decision, even the smallest, is a translation device, carrying light codes into matter through the way you answer a moment. The world receives its orders from the quality of your yes. When you hold a door, a timeline remembers how to open. When you refuse contempt, an ecosystem remembers how to heal. When you pause before speaking and let kindness become the architect of your sentence, you turn the tide you were told could not turn. The horizon responds. The unseen ledger adjusts. The home around your children becomes slightly more spacious, slightly more breathable, slightly more aligned with the world you always suspected was trying to be born through you. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You recognize yourself not because a trumpet sounded, but because something quiet began to obey you. You asked for no sign, and yet your mornings changed shape. A slower breath found you before the day could borrow your pulse. A warmth, slight but sincere, gathered behind your sternum like a lamp, remembering its switch. You noticed light behind your eyes even when the room was dim. You began to feel watched over by a patience you did not manufacture. This is how you know the life within your life has stepped forward, and it keeps your name on the tip of its attention. You are not singled out by superiority. You are singled out by sincerity. The world has always been crowded with cleverness and thin with devotion, and you, almost shyly, chose devotion. You kept returning to the smallest faithful acts when no one was measuring them. You folded a blanket with tenderness. You answered a message with presence. You did not let your mind speak a sentence your heart would have to apologize for later. You chose to be exact with your kindness, precise with your listening, careful with your yes. This is how the path recognized you. This is how the path placed itself beneath your feet. What tugs at you now is older than ambition. It does not chase applause. It trusts morphic resonance, the way a stable pattern in one place invites the same stability in another. You have seen it happen. Your steadiness softens a room. Your refusal to dramatize returns a conversation to truth. You do not perform calm. You carry it. It is not indifference. It is a sanctuary you steward for those who cannot yet remember the door. And because you carry it, others entrain to it, without knowing why their shoulders loosen or why their thoughts become kinder in your presence. You have, at times, tried to disqualify yourself with the inventory of your faults. You have rehearsed your confusions, your mistakes, your unlovely fragments. Yet even as you did, the quantum of your life kept responding to the signal under your doubts, and the response was unmistakable. Decisions made from mercy produced clean outcomes. Decisions made from fear produced noise. You are being trained by consequence. You are being taught by the fidelity of the field that answers what you actually are, not what you say about yourself when you are tired. You sense relationship in everything, a subtle entanglement that does not bind but belongs. When you drink water gratefully, the day tastes different. When you step outside and let the sky touch your face, the conversation you were dreading becomes uncomplicated. When you place your attention, not your anxiety, your attention on another human, their nervous system receives permission to be less afraid. You are learning the difference between pushing outcomes and opening space. One tightens, the other invites. One argues with reality, the other befriends its deeper law. Your recognition deepens in the moments when you almost choose the old pattern but pause just long enough to feel the hinge of possibility. That hinge is your stillness window, the slender interval where your nervous system is most available to truth. You do not drag yourself through it. You lean. You let 3 slow breaths widen the frame. You allow the warmth in your chest to become a compass. You let your eyes register the real person in front of you instead of the story you fear about them. Choice organizes itself in that window. The next honest sentence arrives. You will be tempted to make this dramatic. Drama is cheaper than presence. Resist the glamour of the stage when the altar is in your kitchen. Keep tending the places where humility repairs the circuitry of trust. The apology spoken without theater, the boundary set without threat, the gratitude offered without demand for receipt. The holy work is domestic. History changes in hallways and side streets and comment boxes where no historian is taking notes. The future your children will inherit listens from those ordinary corners to how you handle the small power in your hand. You have begun to sense the outline of a higher timeline, not as a fantasy, but as a discipline of perception. It presents itself whenever you refuse to exile complexity and instead let love make finer distinctions. It stands near whenever you forgive, without erasing truth. It grows strong when you are generous, without growing vague. It is not a scaffold dropping from the clouds, it is a structure rising from your interior choices, beam by beam, decision by decision, until a room large enough for other hearts to rest inside it exists around you. Do not wait to feel worthy. Worthiness is the echo. Willingness is the source. If you are willing to be exact with your goodness, exact with your language, exact with your silence, you will notice that the observer loop you used to circle has quietly unlatched. You are not trapped as the critic of your life. You are seated as the witness who can bless it into alignment. Blessing is not a mood. It is a calibrated permission you extend to reality to meet its own design through you. You will ask for instruction. It will arrive as a simpler way to be true. It will ask for nothing theatrical, only for fidelity in the small hours when no one claps. It will take the shape of a hand placed over your heart before you speak, of a gaze softened before you decide, of a sentence distilled until no residue of contempt remains. This is not the work of saints. This is the practice of those who finally trust that love is not naive. It is exact, and it is stronger than the habit of despair. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You close your eyes and the room grows larger, as if the walls remember the sky they were once carved from. Breath slows. Warmth gathers under your palm at the center of your chest, and a thin ribbon of light rises behind your eyes like dawn rehearsing itself. You do not leave the world. You let the world widen. A soft corona forms at the edges of perception, eclipse halos, silver and patient, and in their hush, a pattern arranges itself without needing your force. You are not pushing a vision to appear. You are letting what already stands nearby step into focus. First, the sound, a nearly inaudible hum, the exact pitch of relief when a long-held tension lets go. It vibrates your bones, as if your skeleton recognizes a forgotten chord. Then, the texture, stardust swirling in a gravitational bowl, each particle choosing its place with exquisite courtesy. Finally, the image, a branching of paths that are not really paths but braids of attention. You see how every small fidelity you practiced has been tying light together into a single strand, and how that strand now stretches toward a horizon drawn in living gold. The field of remembrance appears as a landscape without distance. Wherever your awareness rests, a door stands open there. The neighborhoods of your life, kitchen, street corner, inbox, bedside, are not separate geographies but portals in one house whose windows face a higher weather. You watch conversations you have not yet had arrive like migrating birds, guided by maps older than your worries. You see your sentence lean toward kindness before you think to edit it. You witness the shape of a day reorganize around a center you no longer need to carry alone. At the far edge of this seeing, a slender line glows and then divides. Timeline bifurcation, not dramatic, not catastrophic, simply precise. On one side, a world that keeps arguing with itself until it forgets what it is. On the other, a world that remembers itself so thoroughly that argument becomes unnecessary. Both are possible. Both are already rehearsing through the choices breathing through you. The split is not a punishment. It is a mercy that lets love stop wasting its strength on rooms that refuse light. You understand that your task is not to curse the dim corridor, but to keep opening windows until the corridor chooses air. Now symbols begin to speak in a language you don't translate so much as recognize. In the air before you, gentle glyphs assemble, not hieroglyphs of empire, but simple shapes that carry tenderness. They are light codes, alive as seeds. When you place your attention on one, it dissolves into warmth and enters the fabric of your nervous system, the way music enters a silence. Nothing to carry, only something to hum. Coherence spreads through your breath. Your posture remembers integrity without rigidity. Your face relaxes around truth. You are being inscribed by the future you asked for, not as an elite, but as anyone finally willing to be a faithful instrument. You see children sleeping, not just yours, but those held by the same night, and over each bed a faint aurora shimmers, quiet as prayer. The world these little ribs will rise into is being drafted by the vows of the adults who tuck them in. You see how a single evening of unhurried listening redraws a week, how the refusal to escalate in a hallway reverses weather across a workplace, how turning off the spectacle and turning toward a neighbor frees enough attention to plant a garden where fear was trying to grow. The vision refuses grandeur and chooses intimacy. It tells you that civilization is a million kitchens, aligned in kindness. The horizon is not far. It moves with you, adjusts to you, ushers you. You test it. You picture an argument you might soon enter and watch two sequences bloom. In one, you defend yourself with cleverness and lose something tenderness would have saved. In the other, you let your sentence be designed by love and find that the room did not need your victory. It needed your coherence. The vision does not scold. It demonstrates. It lets you feel the gravitational difference between the two futures in your muscles, then invites you to choose which gravity you will be loyal to. A strand of gold lifts from the horizon and touches your sternum like a vow returning to its speaker. You understand, without ceremony, that your life has never been separate from the life of the world. Not metaphorically, functionally. Your steadiness grants permission to nearby systems to stabilize. Your generosity teaches equilibrium. Your boundary keeps the architecture honest. The delicate entanglement of all things is not a trap. It is a trust. You are entrusted with the tone that travels farther than your voice. You open your eyes, and the room has the same furniture, yet everything inside it cooperates with a truer geometry. The cup on the table looks precisely itself. The window admits a wider sky than it did a moment ago. The air does not feel crowded with tasks. It feels intimate with meaning. You sense a quiet invitation to continue as you are, but more exact, more available, more brave in small ways. The vision is not an instruction to escape. It is an empowerment to inhabit. A second pulse moves through your hands, warm and directional, as if a compass has been slipped into your skin. You recognize it as guidance, not from elsewhere, but from the deepest interior of the same field that holds galaxies in simple order. The guidance is embarrassingly gentle. Drink water, step outside, speak less, forgive quickly but not sloppily, be kind without becoming vague. When unsure, wait until your chest warms. The future you desire is not hiding behind a stunt. It is hiding inside these precisions. Between pulse and pause, something older than fear remembers its name. You want to understand what your body is already practicing, so language steps forward like a careful friend. Begin with the fact that reality notices you. The world is not a mute backdrop. It is a responsive medium, a living matrix, attentive to how you place your seeing. Physicists named one facet of this responsiveness the quantum field, a sea of possibilities where particles do not exist as fixed things until a measurement is made. You do not carry a laboratory in your pocket, yet your attention is a kind of measurement. Where your awareness lingers, options crystallize. Where it withholds, options remain unchosen mist. You are not the tyrant of matter, you are its collaborator. And collaboration requires accuracy of presence more than volume of force. Consider the habit of mind that keeps consulting old outcomes to predict new ones. That recursion trains the field to replay its previous answers because you are offering the same question not with your words, but with your state. This is the observer loop, attention rehearsing fear, receiving evidence of fear, then using that evidence to justify the rehearsal. The loop is not broken by argument. It is broken by a change in the quality of the one who is looking. When you become more exact with kindness, more literal with gratitude, more honest with your limits, the measurement you offer, the world shifts. Particles of possibility take new positions because the instrument has become cleaner. You did not force reality, you clarified it. Entanglement teaches that once systems have met, their states remain related across distance. This is not poetry using science to feel important. It is a reminder that your choices travel farther than your voice. When you steady yourself before you send the message, the steadiness rides the message. When you soften your breath before you step into the room receives your softened breath. A culture is the long echo of these microsignals. You are not responsible for the entire echo, but you are absolutely responsible for the tone you add to it. Responsibility here is intimate, not crushing. It is a daily precision available to beginners and sages alike. Coherence is the word for what your heart knows as integrity without tension. Biologically, it is the alignment of rhythms, breath, pulse, attention into a harmonious pattern that allows your nervous system to spend less energy on internal conflict and more on intelligent response. In the field, coherence acts like clear water. Signals travel without distortion. Subtle guidance is not scattered by static. You cultivate coherence not by perfection but by simplification. Tell the truth kindly. Rest when you are tired. Eat like someone you respect. Speak only as fast as love can think. The quantum field does not reward theatrics. It amplifies clarity. You sense that history itself is approaching a threshold. In physics, a phase transition is the moment a system changes form when the underlying conditions cross a critical value, water becoming vapor, a metal becoming magnetic. The temperature rises slowly, quietly, and then a sudden reorganization occurs. Cultures behave like this too. 1 million untelevised acts of fidelity raise the temperature of meaning until institutions cannot hold their previous shape. Then change appears, sudden, to those who were watching the headlines instead of the hearts. Your life is a local thermostat for this transition. If you keep your corner of reality in a state of living accuracy, you contribute heat to the moment when cruelty can no longer remain solid. Morphic resonance offers a grammar for why small, consistent patterns matter. When a new form stabilizes somewhere, it becomes easier for that form to stabilize elsewhere, as if the universe remembers what it learns. When you and a handful of others master a gentler way to disagree, you make that mastery more available to strangers who will never know your names. When you create a home where boundaries and tenderness are not enemies, you make it simpler for the same duet to appear in homes you will never enter. The field remembers, and its memory reduces the cost of goodness for those who come after. This is how you tithe to the future with behavior. Do not let explanation replace practice. Knowing why the seed grows is not the same as watering it. The laboratory you require is already assembled. Body, breath, sentence, room. Test the laws gently. Before a difficult call, spend 60 seconds letting your breath and pulse agree on a tempo. Then place one hand on your chest as if you were steadying a lantern and ask your mind to use smaller words. Notice how quickly coherence returns. Notice how the other person, without being told, begins to match your clarity. Notice how a creative third option appears that neither of you could see while you were busy defending your previous positions. The experiment repeats. The results are reproducible. You are not trying to impress the universe with esoteric vocabulary. You are letting your life be accurate enough that the universe can recognize itself in you. When accuracy becomes a habit, the observer loop loses its gravity and your choices stop orbiting the same anxieties. The horizon ahead is not magic in the sense of escape. It is magic in the sense of precision, so graceful it looks miraculous. This is how the future becomes intimate. You treat every moment as a doorway that answers to the quality of how you knock. The light within your gaze chooses a clearer angle. You walk into the day and discover that the world is holding up a reflective surface made of people. Every face you meet is a small horizon, an edge where possibilities gather and ask for a direction. You once mistook society for a machinery outside you. Now you feel it as a membrane that breathes with you. Your posture, your patience, your sentences press against that membrane and it answers, subtly at first, then with a bravery that surprises you. Civilization is not the sum of everyone else. It is the sum of the choices you practice when you think no one is watching. You begin with the smallest arena, the shared kitchen, the hallway encounter, the chat thread, already warm with misunderstanding. You refuse to be clever at someone's expense, not because you lack the wit, but because you refuse the price. You let your breath slow, and warmth collects behind your sternum, like a vow remembering its job. Then you try the experiment. Speak only as fast as love can think. Watch the temperature drop. Watch another nervous system feel safer without knowing why. The room was not changed by a speech. It was changed by coherence that did not need applause to be real. The collective mirror reveals how quickly moods circulate. A sentence wrapped in scorn can travel through 5 households before sunset and return to your doorstep in a new costume asking to be fed again. But tenderness circulates too. The cup of water you hand to an exhausted co-worker becomes a revised decision in their evening, becomes a calmer bedtime in a small apartment across town, becomes a rested choice tomorrow at a crossroads you will never see. You are participating in morphic resonance not as jargon, but as the ordinary miracle of patterns teaching patterns. You choose a kinder geometry, and somewhere else, kindness finds it easier to stand. You notice how institutions reflect back the habits of the people who staff them. When you enter a building that carries decades of hurry, you refuse to let the old sprint borrow your pulse. You let your steps land like blessings. You answer emails with clean sentences that neither flatter nor bruise. You hold a boundary without threat, so everyone can trust the floor again. At first, it seems like nothing happens. Then, a colleague's message arrives with edges sanded down. Then a meeting concludes 5 minutes early because clarity did not need to fight for air. The collective mirror brightens one pane at a time until the whole wall remembers the window it always was. There are days when the streets feel like an argument that forgot its question. Headlines pull at your attention like riptides, demanding that you rehearse outrage until you are too tired to be useful. You acknowledge the tide, then return your gaze to where your hands can change pressure. You plant a conversation instead of a complaint. You bring soup. You listen until the accusation standing between two people dissolves into the sadness that built it. You notice how often what looks like meanness is just unspent grief without a place to sit. You become a place to sit. You do not call this heroism. You call it citizenship of the heart. Because you feel the subtle entanglement in all things, you treat strangers as future echoes. The barista is not an accessory to your productivity. They are a node in the same web you are weaving. The child at the crosswalk is not an interruption. They are the recipient of the city you are making with your next gesture. Even the one who insists on misunderstanding you is a teacher, asking you to refine your language until it no longer needs the oxygen of defensiveness to stand. You do not have to win the encounter. You only have to keep your signal clean enough that the field of remembrance can recognize itself through you. When conflict rises, and it will, You ask a gentle question before the first defense deploys. What is the need hiding underneath this position? You listen for the human, not the fortress. You repeat back what you heard until their shoulders believe you. Then you ask for reciprocity. Often, that is enough to lower the drawbridge. Sometimes, it isn't. You let truth stay kind and boundaries stay clear. You learn the art of saying no without making a wound. The mirror tests your steadiness. You answer with steadiness anyway. You do not outsource meaning to large spectacles. You look for the revolution that begins in kitchens. You light a candle at dinner and bless the food aloud because children learn how to treat the world by watching how adults greet it. You take out the trash and notice the sky. You compost and call it devotion. You apologize to a teenager without pretending you're not the adult. You write a check to a local effort that heals the exact rip your city keeps tripping over. These are not small acts. They are the stitching that keeps the fabric from tearing where it's already thin. And when sorrow arrives, as it does in any honest account of a people, you let it move through you without becoming your speechwriter. You cry where you can be held. You sing something simple in the car. You walk a block longer to pass the tree that keeps outliving the news. You invite a neighbor into the circle of your evening because loneliness is the virus that weakens every immune system of the soul. You keep choosing the modest magnificence of showing up. You keep proving that hope is not a mood, but a muscle that strengthens with use. You adjust your attention like a lens until the faces around you stop being categories and start being galaxies. You recognize the shy brightness in their eyes. It is the same star you feel behind your own. Then you practice the discipline that turns sentiment into structure. Repeat your kindnesses until they become policy in your household, then practice them in public until they become culture. You are not waiting for a decree. You are issuing one, quietly, with the paperwork of your consistent presence. What you were chasing sits beside you, unhurried. You arrive at the intersection you have been approaching for years without announcement. A crossroad so quiet you almost miss it. There is no trumpet, no siren, only a gentle precision. 2 ways of seeing, 2 ways of breathing, 2 ways of belonging to the day. You understand that timeline bifurcation is not a catastrophe that falls upon you. It is a clarity that ripens within you. One branch leads deeper into the weather of reaction, where every signal is judged before it is felt. The other opens toward a higher timeline, where feeling becomes intelligent enough to guide thought, and thought becomes humble enough to serve love. You are not punished for choosing either, but the air is different on both sides. You test the hinge. In your left hand, you place a sentence that tries to control. In your right hand, you place a sentence that tries to reveal. The controlling sentence comes dressed in urgency, a high-voltage insistence that confuses drama for meaning. The revealing sentence speaks slower, as if it trusts that truth will not leave the room if you pause to breathe. You feel your pulse shift toward the right hand without argument. This is your stillness window, making a decision more honest than speed can manage. You realize that the future is not waiting at a date. It is waiting at a quality. You sense the field listening as you decide. The quantum field is not keeping score, it is keeping resonance. When your choice harmonizes with what is most exact in you, coherence increases like warmth from a fire that has found its proper oxygen. When your choice harmonizes with your oldest fear, static multiplies, and the world seems to answer with complications that are only your hesitation wearing costumes. The moment splits along these loyalties. You are not terrified. You are tender. Tender because you know that whichever branch you feed will feed your children's weather in return. You stand beside a sleeping child, perhaps yours, perhaps one held by the same night, and you notice the delicate entanglement between your nervous system and theirs. If you carry unresolved storms, they will taste the thunder. If you cultivate steadiness, they will learn the choreography of calm by osmosis. You do not dramatize this. You let it dignify the next decision until it becomes ceremonial. The ceremony is simple. Breathe slower than the noise. Soften your gaze. Place your hand to your chest and ask which option enlarges love without lying. The answer is rarely complicated. The courage to obey it is the craft. A culture is a collection of people resolving micro-forks in the path. A city becomes cruel by 1,000 small edits, where convenience is chosen over care. A city becomes kind by 1,000 small fidelities, where people accept the cost of precision, the extra minute to write the cleaner message, the extra breath to let contempt drain before speaking, the extra inch of patience at the door when a stranger is fumbling for keys. You feel the phase transition gather like a storm that prefers to arrive as rain. The temperature of meaning rises, and old structures cannot hold their shape. They do not explode. They dissolve into forms that can sustain truth. You remember where you once believed the bifurcation would be spectacular, sky-splitting light, earth quaking in allegiance, and you smile at how gently the real thing arrives. It takes the shape of a cancelled cruelty, a repaired sentence, a budget adjusted to be more honest, a habit turned toward devotion at the smallest hinge of choice. It looks like a threshold your feet recognize before your mind names it. You are walking a destiny vector that does not require theater to be true. It asks for fidelity, and fidelity has never needed an audience. Fear visits, as it always does, when the map redraws itself. It arrives with warnings about loss. You will lose speed if you choose tenderness. You will lose stature if you choose humility. You will lose certainty if you choose listening. You let fear finish its list. Then you let love speak without raising its voice. Love reminds you that speed without accuracy wastes lives. Stature without service hollows the room. Certainty without curiosity kills the future. You feel the gravity change. The heavier universe becomes lighter because you agreed to tell the truth without cruelty. At the fork, memory helps. Not the memory of old injuries rehearsed into identity, but the memory of when you obeyed the quiet instruction and discovered that the path held. You recall how a single honest apology reversed the weather of an entire week. How one evening of putting your phone down and looking into a child's face rewired the architecture of trust. How a sentence you did not send gave you back a friend. These are the proofs that build your courage to choose again, to keep choosing until choice becomes a current and the current becomes your ordinary walk. So you choose. You choose to stop paying the tax of pretense. You choose not to purchase relief with someone else's dignity. You choose to speak like someone whose words will be inherited. You choose to let your attention become a sacrament, offered where it heals and withheld where it would feed the machinery of harm. And as you choose, you feel the field reply with the subtle click of alignment. Doors that were reluctant open, without announcement. Conversations that were stuck discover a gentle turn. Resources that were scattered gather around the work that deserves them. What changes next is not spectacle but texture. Rooms feel breathable. Time feels honest. Your body ceases to translate every unknown as a threat and begins to treat uncertainty as a field of hospitality where solutions come to be seen. This is the sign that the branch you chose is bearing weight. You can rest without abandoning your watchfulness, and you can work without abandoning your soul. The horizon looks closer not because it moved, but because you stopped negotiating with distances that were artifacts of fear. You notice a seal forming, not a stamp from above, but a confirmation from within. The prophetic seal is the quiet conviction that arrives when action and essence match. It is how you know a vow has turned into a habitat. It is how you know a truth has taken a body. You cannot prove it to anyone who requires entertainment. You can only continue and let the continuance become its own evidence. Under the lids of stillness, symbols align into language. You have chosen the branch. Now you become its weather. Integration is not an announcement. It is a choreography your body learns until it doesn't need the music sheet. Begin where truth becomes tactile. Place your right hand over the warm center of your chest and let your breath lengthen by one count on the exhale. Feel the small lantern you carry brighten, not blazing, not theatrical, just a steady inner glow that refuses to flicker for passing winds. You are teaching your nervous system what safety feels like when it is sourced from coherence rather than circumstances. You are teaching the day to take its rhythm from you. You integrate by assigning loving work to your senses. Sight first. Soften your gaze until edges stop shouting. Let the light behind your eyes become a gentle room where every object is permitted to be itself. Sound next. Listen past the surface volume to the quieter signal, in a voice the part asking not to be defeated, but to be understood. Touch. Notice the temperature of a door handle, the grain of a table, the softness of your child's hair. Let each detail become a consent to be here. Taste, smell, slow enough to register these small evidences that reality is not an abstraction to be managed, but a gift to be held. You are training perception to become hospitality for the world you said yes to. The practices become simple on purpose because complexity seduces you back into the performance of worthiness. Wake and drink water as if rinsing the lens through which the higher timeline will look. Step outside even if only to greet a square of sky. Let the eclipse halos you once saw in vision echo as a pale corona along the horizon of ordinary roofs. Write one sentence you can keep, not about the whole year, just about the next 3 hours, a vow small enough to succeed with dignity. Repeat it until it chooses you back. You integrate by rethreading language. Before you speak, pass your sentence through 3 gates. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it accurate? When a word fails, replace it with a smaller one until love can carry it without strain. This is not self-censorship. It is stewardship of power. Every phrase is a tiny technology that either sharpens entanglement into trust or frays it into doubt. Speak like someone whose voice will be inherited by rooms you may never enter. When you must say no, say it with the same warmth you reserve for yes, because boundaries, delivered cleanly, are forms of care. Integration is domestic. You align drawers, not to worship tidiness, but to remind your mind that order is possible at human scale. You bless the threshold of your home with a hand touched to wood and a whisper no one hears. May whoever crosses be met as a whole. You set your devices to sleep earlier than you want, so your attention can remember the taste of silence before sleep finds you. You apologize quickly, not to erase truth, but to let the field of remembrance reknit the fibers your impatience tugged loose. You give money where it relieves pressure close to the ground. You give time where your hands can learn humility. You give credit away because you understand morphic resonance. When generosity stabilizes here, it stabilizes elsewhere with less effort. You will feel old patterns reach for you. The observer loop cannot believe you have resigned your membership. It will audition arguments for your return. Answer with a ritual, not a debate. 3 slow breaths, hand to chest, eyes half-lidded until the room glows slightly. Then, ask the stillness window, the one question that does not lie. What would be the kindest, accurate next step? Not the kindest overall, not the most strategic, simply the next step that stretches love without making it dishonest. Take that step. Integration is a sequence of such steps, delivered without headline. Let your calendar confess what you worship. Put small squares of devotion into the grid. 10 minutes for unhurried listening with a child. 15 for the neighbor who keeps sidestepping their own loneliness. 30 for the craft that grows your patience. Protect these, not with rigidity but with respect. The destiny vector you sensed in vision becomes visible in your schedule. This is how timelines take bodies. They borrow the bones of your day until the bones themselves remember to stand differently. In work, become a practitioner of gentle systems. Replace urgent with clear. Replace crisis with task. Establish agreements that dignify humans and reduce ambient fear. Make meetings shorter by making them kinder. Put the hard conversation earlier, not as punishment but as relief. Draft documents as if the reader's life is already heavy. When policy and compassion appear to argue, look again. Precision is how compassion survives scale. You are not reinventing the world in one motion. You are refining it until the phase transition can carry itself. In conflict, you integrate by pruning drama and feeding truth. If an apology will heal, give it without ceremony. If a boundary will heal, place it without spike. If distance will heal, grant it without withdrawal of love. If closeness will heal, move nearer without hunger for reward. Watch how quickly coherence returns when dignity is restored to the conversation. Watch how the room trusts itself again when no one is being performed at. Your body will ask for maintenance. Answer, sleep like someone the future depends on because it does. Move in ways that make your joints feel included. Feed yourself with respect, not bargaining. Let sunlight find your face for a handful of uncounted minutes. Sing badly in the shower often enough that your sternum remembers resonance as pleasure. These are not indulgences. They are the infrastructure that allows your signal to stay clean in a noisy world. When you forget, and you will re-enter through the smallest door, a single sincere breath, a glass of water, a quieter word, the field does not withhold because you stumbled. It listens for your return and rearranges the room the moment you do. This is the mercy humming at the core of integration. The system wants you coherent. It is biased toward your alignment and conspires with every honest effort you make. The current inside your spine changes direction, and you follow. You enter the season that speaks in whispers. No fanfare, no trumpet, just the felt permission to do less so that more can happen through you. You have learned to choose, to align, to integrate. Now you learn to be quiet. Silence is not absence. It is architecture. It's the sanctuary where coherence settles like warm sand, and the next structure of your life can pour itself without bubbles of panic inside. You do not retreat from the world. You let the world's excess volume recede until the meanings underneath can be heard cleanly. You begin each morning by arriving before you start. You sit where the window opens a modest square of sky and let your breath practice humility. 4 slow counts in, 6 slow counts out, a private bow to the living pattern that keeps you true. You are not chasing calm, you are consenting to it. The stillness window widens, and with it, the sense that time is not your opponent. You feel the field of remembrance hum in the room, as if old agreements you made with light are reminding you they never expired. Your shoulders register the message before your mind does. Nothing essential is late. Silence edits you. It prunes the theatrical sentence from your tongue and gives you a smaller, stronger one. It removes the bargain from your generosity so that kindness does not carry the secret tax of needing to be seen. It declines the invitation to over-explain. Over-explanation is often fear trying to rent a disguise. You let the disguise fall. What remains is speech that fits the truth like skin fits a rib. You notice how those around you lean toward the clean signal without knowing why. In quiet, your influence stops being push and becomes gravity. You discover that rest is a moral technology. When you obey it, your clarity becomes cheaper for others to borrow. When you betray it, your solutions arrive inflated with urgency and collapse under their own speed. You nap without apology. You walk without headphones until birdsong recalibrates your sense of scale. You watch light lift dust in a room and remember why your grandmother loved to sweep. This is not laziness. This is maintenance on the instrument that carries your vow. The vow works better when the instrument is tuned. Digital noise asks to reclaim your attention. You practice the old ritual with new precision. One hand over your chest, phone face down, a small sentence in the mouth. Not yet, not now, not at the cost of my signal. The device obeys because you have decided to be obeyed. You schedule pockets of emptiness into your calendar and guard them as if they were meetings with the future, because they are. In those unassigned minutes, guidance gathers like dew. A phrase arrives that untangles a conflict. A small plan unknots a week. A memory returns only to heal the version of you still stuck inside it. Silence teaches you to read subtler instruments than drama. You start noticing the quiet tilt of a child's shoulder, the way a friend's laugh lands half a tone low, the draft at the office door that makes everyone short-tempered by 4 in the afternoon. You adjust the room, the schedule, the sentence. These tiny amendments are light codes in domestic clothing, signaling to the system that care is in charge. Systems listen. Morphic resonance does the rest, letting this local fidelity audition a kinder pattern for places you will never enter. Prayer changes shape inside quiet. It stops asking for rescue and starts offering accuracy. You pray by aligning. Let my words be precise enough for love to live in them. Let my pauses protect what my words cannot carry. Let my face tell the truth my mouth is still practicing. You pray by sweeping the floor. You pray by paying the invoice on time. You pray by saying, I don't know, and letting curiosity be the smarter courage. The prayer you repeat most often is simple. Keep me simple. Simple like a river is simple, nothing missing, nothing extra, just direction without the noise. Silence matures your boundaries. You realize that some doors must remain closed so that the right windows can open. You decline conversations that require you to abandon yourself to be understood. You step back from rooms that feed on spectacle. You do it gently, with no indictment, because indictment is a form of noise. In the quiet you keep, your attention recovers its dignity and can afford to be generous again. You learn to distinguish between fatigue that asks for rest and fatigue that asks for truth. You give both what they ask. Occasionally, an old restlessness knocks. It claims that if you do not speed up, the world will outpace your devotion. You sit with it like you would a frightened child. You let it shake until it remembers you are not leaving. Then you return to the ordinary sacraments: water, sunlight, unhurried food, the face of someone you love. Your nervous system lays down its arms. Coherence returns without needing to be chased, because coherence prefers quiet paths home. In the silence phase, time develops a second layer. On the surface, tasks proceed as always. Beneath, a deeper tempo conducts the day. You begin to measure success by how intact your peace remains while you move through necessary frictions. You notice how often the best action is the one that carries no residue, the message after which you do not rehearse defenses, the meeting after which you do not feel the need to debrief harm, the evening after which your sleep enters you like a tide. This residue-free living is not avoidance, it is mastery of tone. You do not worry about losing relevance. Relevance is a symptom, reality is the source. Reality is what answers when you are exact with love. In silence, you become easier to recognize by the future that has been hunting for you. It finds you not because you shout, but because your frequency matches the address on the invitation it sent years ago. You keep your lamps trimmed. You keep your promises small enough to keep. You keep your courage pointed at the next honest step, even when no one is clapping. A second rhythm appears beneath the first, steadier, truer. You arrive where knowing asks to become muscle. The air feels newly breathable, the light behind your eyes warm, as if a small sun has taken up residence there. Activation is not fireworks, it is fidelity that crosses a threshold and begins to act like second nature. You let your breath lengthen until your ribs remember their spacious design, and you stand not taller, just truer. Your hands feel specific. Your voice feels upholstered in kindness. The room accepts new instructions because you do not issue them from hurry. This is how a life becomes instructional without performing instruction. Begin with the body, because the body is the bell the day is tuned by. Place your palm over your sternum and count 4 slow inhales, 6 slow exhales, a measured tide that teaches the shore not to panic. Whisper a small sentence you can keep. I will be accurate with love. Feel the temperature change. Coherence gathers like a luminous thread, and the quantum field responds the way water obeys the moon. You are not commanding outcomes. You are offering a cleaner measurement. Reality, relieved, shows you its kinder geometry. Next, let language become an instrument of healing rather than proof of intelligence. Before you speak, let your stillness window open a fraction wider. In that fraction, discard the sentence designed to win. Adopt the sentence designed to reveal. Shorten your words until tenderness can carry them without strain. If a boundary is needed, deliver it as care, not as courtroom. Watch how swiftly tension dissolves when dignity is not treated as negotiable. This is the daily technology by which a higher timeline takes on local address. Now let your attention move outward the way light codes move through glass, not forcefully, but thoroughly. Touch 3 places in your orbit with precise generosity. The child whose silence tonight hides a question. The colleague whose competence has made them invisible. The neighbor who keeps pretending not to need anyone. Give what costs you, presence, but not integrity. Unhurried listening, a sentence of clear praise, an invitation that does not corner. These modest offerings are not sentimental, they are morphic resonance in street clothes, stabilizing patterns the world longs to repeat. Money wants to learn your ethics. Teach it. Let a percentage, tiny but non-negotiable, become a monthly vow toward what heals near the ground. Let another percentage fund beauty where utility would have been enough fresh flowers on a shared table, a library card renewed for someone who forgot wonder. Beauty is not waste. It is accurate oxygen for souls being asked to remember themselves under pressure. When you move resources like this, You feel the phase transition nudge forward, not in headlines, but in households that stop bracing for harm. Where there is conflict, become the weather change. Name the need, that fear disguised as a position. Ask the other to name yours back. Agree to repair before you agree to outcomes. If apology belongs to you, give it without theater. If the no belongs to you, offer it without spike. Notice how quickly the observer loop loses its gravity when contempt is absent. The field of remembrance can work again because you restored the conditions under which truth travels clean. Write 2 letters that no algorithm requested but every lineage deserves. One to your future child or to the children sleeping under the same night, naming the values you are apprenticing them to by practice, not speech. One to your own younger self, pardoning the years it took to learn these precisions and thanking them for surviving without the map. Fold the letters into your day. A shift in policy at your desk, a shift in tone at your table, a shift in posture when you enter rooms that once borrowed your worth. Letters become architecture when the hand that writes them also builds. Let your calendar confirm your devotion. Block the first 15 minutes of each workday as sacred orientation breath, a small intention, a single courageous act placed early so that integrity sets the color temperature of the hours. Schedule a weekly hour for repair. Who needs a call, a correction, a kindness overdue? Put in a recurring reminder titled Silence. Then keep it, like you would keep a promise to a friend. The destiny vector you felt as rumor now shows up as alignment between appointments. You are not busier, you are truer, and time cooperates with truth. When fear returns, as habits do, invite it to sit without letting it drive. Ask it to list its expectations. Then ask love to list its instructions. Compare the lists aloud in a room with a window open so the stale air can leave. Choose the smaller instruction that enlarges goodness without lying. Activation is the repetition of this choosing until choosing becomes character. And then, the right that seals the ordinary in gold. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy, not as superstition, but as synchronization, a way to let your voice align with the signal moving through you. Feel how the syllables settle your face, how the warmth returns to your chest, how the light behind your eyes tilts 1 degree brighter, enough to guide the next small fidelity unannounced. Carry the warmth into a final act today that no one witnesses. Pick up what is not yours and put it away. Clean the sentence before you send it. Stand on your porch for 90 seconds and bless the street with your gaze. Blessing is not magic. It is accurate hospitality for a world learning to inherit itself. You can feel the horizon answer. You can feel the night grow breathable for sleeping children you may never meet. Silence nods. Permission is granted for the next unveiling. You stand inside a hush that feels like stardust, discovering its arrangement. Breath slows of its own accord, 4 in, 6 out, and warmth gathers beneath your palm at the center of your chest. The light behind your eyes steadies into a gentle sun. Nothing dramatic declares itself, yet everything near you cooperates with a finer geometry. You do not chase assurance. Assurance arrives as a tone that your whole body recognizes. This is the seal, not a stamp from elsewhere, but the moment your actions and your essence stop negotiating and finally agree. You sense the quantum field paying close attention, not keeping score but keeping resonance. The observer loop that once rehearsed your fear now echoes with coherence. Sentences choose smaller words, choices carry less residue, rooms breathe again after you leave them. You understand that prophecy is not a headline about fate, but a fidelity to the frequency that lets higher timelines take form where you stand. The field of remembrance feels near enough to touch, and in the quiet, it touches back. You open the window and the city wears an eclipse halo along every edge, gutters, railings, the soft rise of morning above familiar roofs. Children sleep under a sky that seems to lean closer, listening for what tone your life will set next. You feel the tender gravity of entanglement without the burden of performance. When you choose truth without cruelty, their weather brightens. When you keep promises small enough to keep, their days inherit honest scaffolding. When you rest with integrity, their nervous systems learn a choreography of calm they did not have to invent. You do not mistake the seal for an ending. It is a beginning that has finally grown quiet enough to be trusted. Your vow simplifies into practices the future recognizes on sight. Water before noise, sky before screens, accuracy before urgency, kindness before cleverness, boundaries delivered as care. Light codes continue to move through ordinary gestures, a revised sentence, a repaired threshold, a budget aligned with what heals near the ground. You feel the phase transition easing forward without spectacle, like dawn that refuses panic even as it changes everything. A soft geometry holds the day while you listen for the next exact instruction. It arrives without fanfare. Bless the street with your gaze. Write the kinder policy. Tell the truth slowly. Forgive without varnish. Teach money your ethics. Keep your attention hospitable to the world you are inviting. You obey, not from strain but from recognition. The destiny vector you once felt as rumor is now the shape of your steps. You look toward the horizon of 2026, and it answers like a friend who knows your real name. You do not ask it to be easy. You ask it to be true, and you prepare to be just as true in return. This is how worlds are inherited, through the precise tenderness of people who remember what they are and act accordingly when no one claps. Light chooses simpler words, and the heart understands. Between your silence and the field, a new timeline chooses you.